Hello, I'm Jingchen Ge. Today I will give a presentation about the progress of my individual project, Understand Birds' Camouflage Braking Mechanism with a Computational Approach. I will start with the motivation and general goals of the project, and then talk about what I've done so far. Finally, I will go through my plans for this project in the following weeks. As we all know, camouflage is used extensively by military, hunters, base station companies, and so on, with the goal of making objects less obvious or obtrusive. On the other hand, nature has already played this trick for millions of years with its evolution mechanism. Typical examples include snakes, geckos, octopuses, and of course, moths. People have noticed and studied moths' camouflage for many years, and one of its members, the peppered moth, is always referred to as an example of population genetics and natural selection, since their camouflage had changed during the Industrial Revolution, as the polluted trees had changed their colors of bark. From one perspective, this phenomenon definitely shows how moths with crypsis could be protected from predators. However, just like all the prey is in the wild, they are not invincible, and they are always suffering from the selection pressure of predation. During daytime, birds are the main predators that prey on moths. But what kind of information birds' visual systems really depends on in order to locate camouflaged moths. Since great eyesight is necessary for efficient flight and forage, birds' vision are believed to be very effective in handling colors and patterns. Moreover, research shows that birds are also able to move in certain patterns to make use of 3D features and emotional features, which could also be a major reason for their successful predation. In order to solve this question in a more convincing way, instead of biological experiments, possibly a computational approach could be applied. Generally, the focus of the project is to simulate the vision and behavior of birds during their detection of moths in the wild with neural network-based computer vision techniques. It is important to notice that instead of simply detecting moths with deep learning methods and plenty of training images to achieve a highest possible accuracy, the project is really aiming for finding out what kind of visual information relevant movements that birds are possibly using in the wild when conducting such a challenging task, namely spot moths with camouflage efficiently. To be more specific, I'm going to firstly implement a moth detector simply based on independent images with or without a moth to mimic birds' vision at one instant. Then the detector will take temporal information like optical flow into consideration. Then based on this and the same underlying technique as before, judge the presence of a moth. Meanwhile, there will be some comparison of the effectiveness between two approaches to get some intuition about what birds' visual systems are actually trying to do for high confidence about detecting a moth. Thereafter, the above two detectors will be combined to get an integrated system which aims to simulate birds' vision from a high level and then try to find out what kind of movements our integrated system should perform in order to maximize the accuracy of detection. The first thing I have done is the acquisition of training and test data. Apparently, it is unrealistic to acquire enough moth images in the wild, so at the moment, all the training data are generated by cutting out small parts of bug images and put them onto other bug images. Similarly, 3D samples will be produced by layer up the foreground and the background images. In order to avoid overfitting during the learning process, a randomized approach was taken to ensure the difference between individual training and test images. As we can see here, this figure displays an example pair of positive and negative training images for the classifier. After enough training data had been generated, I built a simple max pooling-based convolutional neural network illustrated by this figure. It could effectively classify images with or without moth. As we all know, those CNNs are particularly useful for image classification problems. they cannot be directly applied to object detection problems. Therefore, I then adopted a sliding window approach to break this problem down to classifications. Basically, this method applies classification everywhere by stepping through small parts of the image with different sizes and different locations. This technique is straightforward and therefore easy to implement, but it is very inefficient, since I have to go through a huge number of test images, and there would be a huge number of patches on each of them. Currently, each test image has only one moth on it, and among 120 moths on 120 test images, 106 of them were detected. This figure demonstrates one successful test and one failed test. The major problem now is that the speed of prediction is unsatisfactory, which means tests are expensive, and this will have to be improved. That takes us to the third part of this presentation. The first thing I'm going to do next is to reduce prediction time by implementing RCNN. The sliding window approach lacks in efficiency since it has to go through all possible locations, so theoretically we should be able to perform faster detection if we could propose initial candidates for detection. RCNN implement this region proposal technique by performing a selective search. Basically, as shown in this figure, selective search first divides an image into small regions and then tries to merge small regions into larger regions based on color, texture, area, then tries to merge and so on until the whole image is one single region. Afterwards, for all the regions which have ever existed, we compute CNN features and then eventually classify these proposals. There are still a lot of regions to be processed and a lot of computation to be performed, but given that the images we will perform detection on are relatively simpler than daily pictures, and there are other improved versions of RCN with much higher efficiency, we should be able to significantly speed up. Then, I'm going to build a detector which could make use of temporal information. To be more specific, the second detector will be based on an optical flow model. In order to describe the movement of an object or a camera, optic flow, which is the pattern of apparent motion of image objects between two consecutive frames, is always employed as an essential model. Optical flow assumes that along trajectory, the intensity of a point on an object does not change, which could be plausible if the interval between frames is small enough. With frames as input, we are able to estimate optical flow by performing a Lux-Kanadi method. Optical flow could be useful for this project since we know when a camera is moving, objects at different distances could appear differently on motion fields. For instance, if this is the moving camera, the motion field should have the property as shown in this figure here. Since a moth could be considered as a flat object on a closer layer, we are able to extract information about the difference between the foreground and the background when the virtual bird's eye is moving. Eventually, I'm going to integrate subnetworks or subdetectors with a Siamese network architecture. Don't forget, one of the key points of this project is about combining multiple networks so that we could get a single detector based on different features but the same network, which is similar to a real biological visual system. Siamese networks, which are based on weight sharing, is a class of architecture that contains multiple identical subnetworks. Typically, this type of network is used for matrix learning, which means the output is the distance between the two training examples. But in this project, the Siamese network provide us with a way of feeding two classes of training examples based on different features into the same system, so that the classification could make use of collective information. Finally, I will perform experiments on detectors and integrate the detector to compare their effectiveness, and based on that, find out what kind of information is more important for a neural network-based visual system when performing camouflage breaking, and how the detection accuracy could be maximized. That is all I have to talk today. Thanks for watching.